Hi folks, just a quick update on this situation and this hoax that they call the coronavirus. And folks, the more I look at this and the more it rolls out, the more I'm convinced this is a complete hoax. You know, I had speculated for a while whether it was a bioweapon and whether it was this or whether it was that, but the more it rolls out and the more I see the response to this, the more I think it's a hoax. Do you know there is no test for the coronavirus anyway? There is no test you can do to determine whether anyone has COVID-19. All they're doing is giving people respiratory checks and seeing if they have any sort of respiratory issues and looking at where they might have been to see whether they've got this terrible virus. But folks, have a look at what's going on in the world. We've got Italy in a full state of lockdown, and this should show you how much of a hoax this is, folks. You've got Italy in a full state of lockdown. All shops except for supermarkets and chemists have been closed. People, canteens, all other shops are being closed. Schools are closed down. Virtually the entire country is in a state of lockdown. You've got Trump suspends travel from Europe. Not just Italy, but the whole of Europe. Travel has been suspended to the United States, while at the same time, the United States has just deployed 30,000 soldiers into Europe for a war game, the Defender Europe 20 exercises. Okay, look at all these tanks. They've sent a shitload of Abrams tanks and all this artillery, 20,000 soldiers to join the 10,000 that are there already. Folks, if there was this terrible COVID-19 pandemic sweeping across Europe, do you think they would send 30,000 United States troops in there without them all wearing hazmat suits and masks and all the stuff they would need to protect themselves from this virus? Of course they wouldn't, folks. They're sending all these troops in there because there is no virus. This whole thing has been designed to lock our societies down. When we look at what's going on in China, folks, there's been a mass cleanup of dissidents in China is what's happened. There's every indication there may even be a power struggle happening in China. The emperor is not able to change all of the mayors and all the governors and all the people around China who run the infrastructure. These get changed every few years because you don't want anyone plotting against the emperor. So he changes them every few years. That can't happen this year because the whole place is in lockdown over this alleged Wuhan flu. So you've got to wonder where it's all coming from. And then they've just rolled it out to the rest of the world. And there is no flu. There is no, well, there is a flu, of course there's a flu, but there is no coronavirus, folks. This whole thing is a complete hoax. You don't even need to have a real threat anymore. You just need the perception of a threat. As David Icke often says, problem, reaction, solution, but you don't even need the problem. You just need the perception of the problem. Hegelian dialectic, folks, right down the line. That's what they're doing. This whole thing is a complete scam. What they're going to do is they're going to limit all of the businesses. People are going to have to stay home in quarantine for 2 weeks, so they're going to lose their wages. So people are going to lose their small businesses. All small businesses are going to be squeezed out. They're making the airlines continue to fly because if the airlines don't fly, they lose their slots. So you're going to see all the small carriers can't afford to do it anymore. They're all going to drop off the map. You're going to see all of the small businesses, everything's going to change, folks. It's all going to become a two-class society. This is the first step they're using to do it. And all of this is being done to cover up the economic crash that has to happen. See, they can blame the economic crash on the lack of trade because they had to shut China down. They can blame it on the coronavirus. They can cancel the debt that the United States has with China because they're going to destroy China's economy. If they change the power structure in China, that'll be an interesting thing. If there is something that happens and there's a power shift in China, you'll know that there's been a deal made between some faction in China who's made a deal to drop the US debt in response for this coronavirus outbreak and to let the whole thing happen. This is a globalist move, folks. It really is. This whole threat of virus that's coming out across the world, there is no coronavirus, folks. Anybody who gets tested for coronavirus is going to come up positive because we all have elements of coronavirus in our bodies. It's the common cold. Go and have a look at the back of a bottle of Dettol. You'll see coronavirus. Have a look up what the common cold is. It's coronaviruses make up the common cold. You'll say, oh, this is different. This is COVID-19. That's because it was 2019 that it was discovered. There would have been COVID-15, COVID-16, COVID-17, COVID-18, COVID-19, because there's a seasonal flu every year. This year we'll have COVID-20. You watch. This is a scam, folks. The whole thing's a scam. This is about providing a cover for the economic crash to make it seem like it's the virus and not their mismanagement. It wipes all the other stuff out of the headlines as well. You're not hearing anything about Prince Andrew and Epstein and all this sort of stuff anymore. You're not hearing about all the pedophile activity that's going on here in Australia, the Beaumonts, all the stuff that I told you about on the last report that I did. You're not hearing any of this. All you're hearing is COVID, COVID, COVID. Anybody who's dying, they're saying it's COVID. The first case we had of coronavirus death here in Australia was someone in Perth. They were 95 years old, and they said, oh, they died of coronavirus. Wasn't old age. It wasn't because they'd been on medication from the hospital for 50 years. It wasn't because they had them locked in a cruise ship and told them they were going to die and locked them up in a room for two weeks and bombarded them with Wi-Fi and all that sort of stuff. It wasn't because of any of that. No, it was because of coronavirus. Folks, you're going to have people dying in car accidents. You're going to say, oh, that's coronavirus. At this stage, folks, you're going to have someone attacked, robbed, smashed in the head with a hammer, and they'll say he died of coronavirus. That's the way it's going. It's completely ridiculous, folks. And people also, with the whole 5G thing, we know 5G is bad. I was one of the first people who warned you about 5G. 5G is a weapons system. It's the carrier wave they use for weapons systems. And you can induce coronavirus type symptoms through certain applications of the 5G system, but not just with 5G on itself. Just by switching 5G on, you're not going to be inducing symptoms in people. You need extra tech. You need to have 60 gigahertz. You need all of this other stuff that they haven't managed to roll out yet. So, people saying that, as soon as they switch 5G it's going to cause this big apocalypse. This is completely misinformation, folks. And, that sort of stuff is why I started pulling away from even reporting about 5G, because of the amount of misinformation that was happening because of this. I mean, sure, they can do a lot of stuff. Go and look up DARPA weapons patents, directed energy weapons, all of this sort of stuff, crowd control, active denial. This is all 5G powered, but it isn't simply 5G. They need other stuff. They need other hardware, other tech that goes with it. 5G is simply the carrier wave. So, this virus is not 5G induced. This virus is completely fictitious, I would suggest, ladies and gentlemen. The coronavirus is simply the common cold. And anybody who they diagnose as having the coronavirus, sure, they could take them into a facility and they could use the 5G system and they could simulate the coronavirus symptoms within someone, and they probably could cause death in someone. But they would have to have a facility set up that was particularly set up to have the 60 gigahertz routers and the 60 gigahertz frequency there to be able to do it. You can't just do it in general society at the moment. You can't just say that the places that have had 5G switched on are correlated to where the coronavirus is and that it's related, because I don't think it is. Like I said, folks, I don't even think there is any coronavirus. If there was a coronavirus in Europe, there was a coronavirus sweeping across Italy, you wouldn't have the United States sending 30,000 troops in there without hazmat suits, along with all those Abrams tanks and everything they're doing. So I think people need to stop panicking with this, stop panicking about the virus anyway. You should be concerned about what the government's doing. And you don't need to be buying up on toilet paper, folks. You need to be getting canned food. You need to be prepping. You need to be prepared for what they're going to do, because I'll give you a clue. The Hunger Games was a documentary, and that's where we're headed if people don't rally up and get a wind of what's actually happening, connect with the people around them and stand together and simply say no in the face of all of this. That's all I've got to share with you today, folks. I think it's very important that people look at this, really step back, don't buy into the paranoia, just prep, get yourself some food supplies, get yourself ready to be locked down for a couple of weeks, and connect with your neighbours. Don't buy into the propaganda, and don't be in fear of the coronavirus. The coronavirus isn't your problem. The problem is the government. In Lakesh.